All right, great song. So, I want to tell you a little bit of a story as we get started. So, we got this little boy at home who's afraid of the dark. Now, I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, and the house that we had moved into was already 150 years old, and this was like 80 years, 70 years ago, right? So, we're living in this really old farmhouse, and if you recall some of the older houses, when you had a thunderstorm, it would crackle through the faucets you'd see it spark somewhere in the house. It was just common. You had to have a grounding rod on the roof, and you had to have all this stuff going on. And so this kid's in this room, and he's trying to go to sleep, and the thunderstorm hits because they always hit at night, and he's scared. He's really worried. He's nervous. So he ends up calling out. Have you ever been scared where you don't even want to get out of bed? You got the covers over your head. You're going, "Hey, somebody!" And he's calling out to his dad, saying, "Look, I need you to come quickly." So Dad gets up. He goes running into the room. "What's the matter, son?" He says, "Daddy, come quick. I need you." And he says, "Son, Jesus is with you." The boy says, "I know, but right now I need somebody with skin on." Sometimes that makes a difference, right? Well, today we're going to talk about some miracles that Jesus did with skin on for him to be able to demonstrate to all that were there and to all of us today that he, in fact, is God. So, our primary text we're going to take from John 11, Matthew 14, Mark 2, and then we got some supporting texts that we're going to hit on as well. All of you will get this in our email, the devotional slides, so you're welcome to look these verses up. So here's our setting, the next slide. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus performs miracles that reveal his divine nature. It's his authority over life, his authority over death, his authority not just with people, but over nature, creation itself. After all, he was there creating it, right? He's also going to demonstrate his power and his authority over demons and over sin itself when he tells somebody, "Your sins are forgiven." And everybody is standing around just going crazy. What in the world does that mean? He can't do that. Only God can do that. Well, that was the point, right? So he was going to demonstrate that. So today we can answer that question that Jesus had asked his disciples early on. Who do you say that I am? And of course he had to use the I am part, right? Because all the Jews would know what I am meant. That is Yahweh. That is God. And so he was able to phrase the question to his disciples to get a response from them that would indicate that he himself is declaring to be God and is God. So we're going to look at that a little bit today. So, our first point, Jesus shows his divinity through his authority over death. Who else do you know can go in and just say, get up if you're dead, and they can do it? Jesus goes to Lazarus' grave, right? This is where in the book of John we get the shortest verse in the Bible. If you're a King James person, it says Jesus wept. If you're an NIV person, it's not the shortest in the Bible because it's then Jesus burst into tears. Kind of messed up the verse. Anyway, Jesus is there to demonstrate his God authority. And he shows up after Lazarus has been dead 4 days. The boy stinks, right? I mean, he's been there 4 days. And everything, the instant that you die, you begin the decay process. And they didn't embalm then. So we're looking at some pretty serious stuff. So when Jesus comes over and says, "Lazarus, come forth," it's like, wait a minute. You know he's been in there 4 days, right? How's this going to work out? So, the verses say, so they took away the stone. Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Jesus himself, as God himself, yet also fully human, is communicating with God the Father and acknowledging that it is from God. I knew that you always hear me, which is the promise he has given us. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me, that I am the Messiah. I am the promised one. I am you, God, in the flesh. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face, and Jesus said, unwrap him. Right? Get him out of those clothes. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed. You can't talk about those kinds of things. You have to act on those kinds of things. And Jesus said, I'm going to show you. Not to kind of, put it back in your face kind of thing because you didn't have enough faith thinking that all I could do was heal him while he was sick. And both Mary and Martha questioned him when he got there. Lord, we told you he was sick. If you had only been here, you could have healed him. And Jesus looks at them with those compassionate eyes with love and says, I got this. Paraphrase, of course, but So next, Jesus demonstrates to both Mary and Martha and to the crowd that was there, gathered for the purpose, well, two purposes actually. Some of them wanted to know what was going to happen when Jesus showed up. And some of them were there just as part of the mourning process to support Mary, to support Martha in the fact that Lazarus had died. And Jesus says, I got this. Let me show you. Jesus was not limited by time, right? He didn't have to show up when Lazarus was still alive. Jesus was not intimidated by the grief. He wept with them. In his compassion, he was able to understand what their grief was and was able to weep with them, knowing that there was going to be a moment of celebration right behind that. Jesus was not defeated by death. Now, I've heard people say this before, and it kind of makes you think, what would have happened if Jesus stands there in front of that cemetery and says, come forth? Everybody's up. And there was a very specific purpose for a very specific person, so that it wouldn't look like it was some kind of magic thing. It wouldn't look crazy or weird to everybody that was there, except for the fact that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. But he was very specific. So there was no question in anybody's mind when Lazarus is the one that came out, it's because Jesus is the one that said, Lazarus, come out. And he did that, and it happened. This miracle reveals Jesus as Lord himself. So next, Jesus shows his divinity through authority over death. Lazarus isn't the only person that he did that with. So we have as an example up here, we have raising Jairus' daughter. Jesus speaks and she wakes up and gets up. Can you imagine? I got to ask, can you imagine what it would be like? You're dead and then you're not, and then you die again? I mean, I don't know where all that goes. But I heard a Christian comedian one time talking about the fact that somebody was being raised from the dead. Well, we'll pick Lazarus as an example. He said, can you imagine? Lazarus, all his troubles are behind him. He's in paradise. He's enjoying being in the presence of Jesus. And then he says, and somebody comes to him and he goes, we're going to have to send you back. Can you imagine? Anyway, we won't go there. But sometimes it gets a little funny. So even raising the widow's son at Nain, compassion and divine authority meet. These miracles display the same truth. It was only possible because it would be God doing it. Nobody else could do that. Nobody. So Jesus was, throughout his ministry, able to continue reinforcing to everyone that was with him that he was in fact God. We have people all the time that say, well, Jesus, we can believe he was a good prophet because he never did declare that he was actually God. Well, that's what he got crucified for, was declaring that he was God. It was blasphemy to the Pharisees. And he declared it numerous times. And he demonstrated it numerous times. But now we also see that he's got authority over creation itself. The God who created it all, guess what? Has authority and power over it. And Jesus demonstrates that, first of all, walking on the stormy water, and then getting in the boat, putting his arms up and saying, peace be still. And instantly, it's not like it had to wind itself down, right? Instantly, the waters were peaceful, the wind had stopped. And the disciples who've been walking with him now for a little while, and they see Peter walking on the water, and they get back in the boat, and he calms the storm, and they all look at each other and say, wow, what kind of person can be over that? I'm confused. I don't understand. Well, you're not listening. And Jesus was able to demonstrate that he had the authority over creation. Next. Then Jesus shows his authority over sin and all the spiritual demonic things. And so Jesus heals the paralytic. This is the guy who, interestingly enough, kind of like the blind man from birth last week, we talked about the fact he didn't call out, he didn't ask, he didn't, and Jesus just healed him. The guy that gets let down through the roof, what did he have to do with it? None. Who let him through the roof? His 4 buddies. Right? And Jesus is healing this person on the faith of his friends who are interceding on his behalf. Now, I'm not going to say that didn't change the paralytic once he was healed. But Jesus, again, was using this solely for the purpose of showing everybody in the entire household that he, in fact, had the authority and the power as God and could perform a miracle as God. And then we get to Mark chapter 5, where we got the guy running around crazy, calls himself Legions, comes out of the tombs, running around just in fits, recognizing the demons inside him are recognizing that this is Jesus. You can believe in Jesus and not be saved. It requires that personal relationship with him and recognizing that he is the one that did the work to get you to heaven. Satan believes in Jesus. Satan knows Jesus. So in this particular miracle, he's able to cast the demons out of this man and give him sanity again. So even the spiritual realm, even the dark side, recognizes who Jesus is. Even to the point where, next slide, even to the point where the demons are asking Jesus, if you're going to pop us out of this guy, put us in something. Because here's how it went. If you recall, there is a pit for some of the demons who fell from heaven that were so bad, so nasty, so evil, that they were placed and chained in a pit until eternity is ready to start and they are cast into the lake of fire with everybody else. And if that demon was not associated with a body, it would just be free. They knew, the demons knew, that if they just came out of that guy so that they would be able to roam freely, that their judgment was going to come early and they were going to be put in the pit with the others. So the demons are sort of asking Jesus, have compassion on us, put us in something or somebody so we don't end up in that pit. And Jesus honors that and pulls the demons out of that man and puts them into that herd of swine, who then all go nuts and drive themselves off the cliff into the water and die. Jesus honors the demon's request as he brings that man back to normal, back to sanity. So why would Jesus do that? Well, this matters because the miracle reveals that Jesus is not just a healer. He is the sovereign Lord over the entire spiritual realm. The demons knew that if they didn't ask Jesus, that they were doomed to the pit until the end of time. They knew that he had the authority, he had the power to do whatever he wanted with them. And they had zero control over how that was going to come out. That still is going to prove that Jesus was the sovereign Lord over everything. Next. So the demons understood that disembodiment was going to be torment, being chained up, put in there. The abyss is a confinement. And any body that they could get into was better than having no body at all and placed into that abyss. This miracle shows Jesus' compassion for the man as well as his supremacy over all the spiritual realm. Next. So then Jesus reveals his glory to strengthen faith. So we get to the Transfiguration. Picture this, right? You got Elijah, you got Moses. They're kind of standing there on top of this mountain. They're probably having their own little discussion. Oh, wow, you're here too. And they get to talk a little bit. And James and Peter and John are standing up there, and they're witnessing all of this. The Father's voice affirms that Jesus is his beloved Son. And this miracle of this transfiguration where they have disciples able to witness the glory of God coming down onto Jesus and him just reflecting that glory outward to where it impacted them as well. It showed them that he is the glorified Son. And that his glory did not have to be hidden. Even though he was 100% man, he was also 100% God. And God the Father was not asking him to hide who Jesus was. He had specific moments in time where he was able to reveal himself to everyone. So, next. Believing his promise that he is always with us. That takes us back to Matthew 28:20. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the age. How is your faith strengthened? By being reminded that who you trust for your eternal security and salvation is not just capable of, but also reveals himself to us every day. Does that not encourage you? Does that not excite you? Does that not give you that anticipation that says, okay, God, this is your day that you have created. You do new mercies every single day. This is the day that the Lord has made. I'm going to rejoice and be glad because I want to see what God's going to do next. And we can live our life based on the anticipation that this is God's. No matter what He brings into our life, He brings it to show us who He is. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the miracles that the reason they were performed was to just strengthen the disciples and other people's faith and trust in Him. That's the purpose. To strengthen us, to bring us in a closer relationship with Him, so that we recognize that yes, He is the one that's in control, that yes, He is the one that governs all things, and He has a plan for all things and a purpose for all things. And I'm one of those purposes. I'm one that God has a plan for, a purpose for, and I can watch day by day how He works in my life to get me more like Him, regardless of what the circumstances are around us. Our faith is in the living Son of God who holds all authority in heaven, on earth, displays that He is God all the time with skin on. We're not praying to some mystic, whatever, unknown. You know, like when Paul was preaching to the Greeks, and he said, I see all these statues of all your gods that you worship, and I see this one over here that says, this is for the unknown God, because, you don't want to make anybody mad. And I'm going to tell you about who this unknown God is, because you can know Him. And you can live in a relationship with Him. So next, when we look at the miracles of Jesus, we see acts of compassion as well as His revealing Himself of who He is. Every miracle in today's study points to one unshakable truth: Jesus is God. There should be no question. Well, I wasn't there to see it. Yeah, me neither. But it's a historical fact that's been recorded, not just in Scripture, but in external sources of things that have happened. It's a fact. And we can believe that. We can trust that. He's Lord over life. He's Lord over creation. He's Lord over sin. He's Lord over the spiritual realm. And in the transfiguration moment, He was able to show His glory to others, the radiance of heaven itself. The same Jesus who holds authority over death, nature, demons, and sin is the Jesus who not only works in us, but walks with us every day, every moment of every day. I'm not a cheerleader type, but that should excite you. Just for the reminder, the remembrance of who Jesus is. He's not just the Son of God. He's God in the flesh, in person. So as we get ready for praise and prayer time, let's remember who it is that we are following, that we are worshiping, that we are strengthened by every day, that we are loved compassionately by Him every day, and we see His working every day in our lives, in the world around us. That builds our trust and our faith in Him, that we'll get into more detail next week. There is no question from an apologetics side of things that Jesus is who He said He is. He has proven it. He has demonstrated it. And that should encourage us in our daily walk to know we have nothing to fear. We have nothing to be anxious about. We don't know what the next step is, but God knows what that next step is, and He's going to take us through it. When we talk about in Psalm 23, walking through the valley of the shadow of all that nasty stuff that's coming up, it never says we sit down. As I walk through, Jesus is with me. Whatever your circumstances. And we are continually reminded, endure. Not the hardship, endure in the faith. Persevere in the faith. Always be reminded of who Jesus is. Always be reminded of what God has done for us and hold fast. Be steadfast in that faith. Don't walk away from it. Don't lose it. Hold on. Because it is recognizing and knowing who Jesus is. Knowing that He also seals us. We can't lose our salvation. I don't want anybody going there. Oh, well, I give up. I lost my salvation. No, you did not. But the blessings of God that are on our life when we continue to acknowledge who He is and just strap on the seatbelt and say, okay, God, I am ready for the ride. Let's go. And God says you will be rewarded by enduring in the faith. That's our command. That's what we're to do.